Hey, good Saturday morning, everybody. Thanks for jumping in with us and joining us for a conversation with Ben Kudon from American Prime Manufacturing. As I said, we're going to talk about Harley clutches. Ben has been in this industry for a very, very long time. He's going to tell us some stories, entertain us for a few minutes, and we're pretty excited about that. I did start about a minute early. If you guys, hey, Mike, good morning. If you guys could give me a couple thumbs up comments, let me know if the audio is coming in good. And when I patch Ben in here in a second, then of course, give me a thumbs up. Let me know that everything is good to go. Before we start out with Ben, I want to give a shout out to our newest channel members. Guys, thanks a million for supporting the channel. If you're interested in becoming a member, you'll see a card up here at the top once the video pops back into YouTube there. And also in the comments section. I love hearing all of your comments and hearing feedback from you guys, your experiences on all the stuff that we talk about. So anyway, thanks to these channel members for jumping in and supporting the channel. We've got Bearer of Fate, Larry Daughtry, Native SD53, Michael Riggin, Scott Soley, Christopher Lesko, and our newest channel member is actually my father-in-law, George. Thanks. Now I can buy your daughter a little more food. It's wonderful. So, guys, again, thanks for joining, and I'm going to check and see if we've got Ben in here with us. And see. Hey, Ben. Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing, buddy?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you good. Let's see. Kenneth Strom says he's okay. He can hear us all the way from Sweden.
Wow. Holy mackerel. It's on my bucket list, Sweden.
Sweden?
Yeah.
I knew a girl named Inga from Sweden.
You may want to practice that Swedish accent a bit.
I probably should. Excellent. Ben, you're coming in clear. I'm coming in clear. So anyway, let me give you guys a little bit of history here with Ben. We've known each other going up 15 years plus at this point, right?
Easy, yeah.
And one of the things I liked about Ben is he's I'm going to say it flat out, guys. Ben has never been a bullshitter. He's as straight shooter as you can get. His handshake means something, and it's a good thing. But he's got a lot of history in this industry too. I remember you were really the first guy to put fuel injection on a Harley engine, right? That was that Yellow Thunder twin you built back in the Excel days, right?
Yeah, that's correct. That's right. It's a little bit of history. I think probably a lot of people aren't familiar with.
Yeah, well, fill us in, man. How did you get started? Tell us a little bit about your motorcycle career.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I want to say that my company, American Prime Manufacturing, is a veteran-owned company. I was in the Marine Corps from 69 to 75. I think that's important to get out there, because I support veterans in every way possibly imagined. I have 40 plus years in the industry. I actually started out in the 70s. I had a little shop back in Connecticut called Loco Motion Cycle. Did repairs and bought parts from local parts guy who was a guy named Long Riders, custom motorcycle out there in Milford, Connecticut, a good friend of mine. And over the years, I've worked for, after, X amount of years doing that, I was working for Brothers Harley Davidson out in Connecticut, I think they're in Branford, Connecticut now. But I was working there for a few years, and a company called Echlin Inc. was not too far from us, maybe a couple of miles from us. And the product manager there, who was the product manager for the motorcycle stuff for Excel, which was a unit that was owned by Echlin, used to come into the dealership all the time and ask me for help identifying applications and this, that, and the other thing. And over the years, this guy would, I guess, told his boss, and his boss would come down, and a guy named Joe St. Lawrence, another guy named Mike Vendetto, and they would talk to me about applications and Harleys and what's going on, blah, blah, blah. So after a while, this guy left, the product manager, and the head honchos there, Joe Saint and Mike Vendetto, asked me if I'd be interested in coming to work for him. And so, I went and I did the whole routine with the, talking to them and giving my background and everything. And they said, well, what do you think? You think you want to work? The salary's pretty good, blah, blah, blah. I said, you know what? I said, I would do that even if you didn't pay me, because that's what I want to do. I mean, that to me was the pinnacle. That was.
You do something without getting paid? No.
It was, I didn't. But I mean, it was that, much of a importance to me, to get into the industry,
Right.
I thought, oh, this is going to be great, and I'll be able to, I'll be right in, blah, blah. Of course, that didn't all turn out to be the correct thing, because I ended up doing a lot less writing when I actually got in the industry, because I was always moving around to traveling and, working. So, but nonetheless, in '98, I started working for Excel, and I was with them for about 8-9 years. I forget exactly. And one of the pinnacles of my career there was Joe Saint and Mike Vendetto and I was sitting around there and Joe said, what about fuel? Because he was a car guy. He was big car guy. But he had a little company, just to deviate a little company called Power Band. He owned a Harley dealership in New York, and he had this little thingy called Power Band, where he packaged some Chevy 6-cylinder points and a condenser, and he sold it as a kit for Harleys, through his dealership. And Eklund bought that company, and he ended up coming to work for Eklund after he sold his dealership, and that's how that whole thing happened. Anyhow, he said, what about fuel injection for Harleys? And we started talking about it. Yeah. And we had a unit called DFI, which was part of Eklund. DFI was digital fuel injection. And there's a couple of guys, John Meany and Joe Meany and Perry Paelli, that worked there, and we got them involved. And they said, yeah, there's no problem. We could make a small module. I told them the package had to be real tiny, easily programmed, et cetera, et cetera. So we worked on it for it was a couple of years, and I, along with working on that, I started. We had prototypes. We put on an '88 FXRP, and I would ride all over the country, and I mean all over the country, out to California, out to Florida, in the Keys, and Perry would meet me, if I had some problems, or he'd come out and he'd do some tuning, to get like I'd go up to Pikes Peak, and figure out what we needed to dial in the fuel curve and the ignition curve, and what sensors were doing, what they weren't doing, if we needed more sensors, et cetera, et cetera. Anyhow, we ended up with a package called Thunder Twin fuel injection, and it basically was a EFI system to a tune port injection system for Harleys. And I built the bike, and this is a funny story. I thought it was funny at the time. I don't think it's that funny now, but
we'll let you know if it's funny.
Yeah. I can always count on you, Kev.
Hey, man, no problem.
Anyhow, I built this bike to showcase the Thunder Twin fuel injection, and I've always been a panhead guy. I love panheads. So I figured, hey, this would be great. I'll build a panhead, and we'll paint the thick colors. The Excel is yellow. And a guy, Billy Paintball Connolly, did this great graphics on it. With the broken sky with thunderbolts coming out, and it said Thunder Twin fuel injection. Really nice page of it. It's a beautiful bike, panhead, generator, panhead. That's where I screwed up, because at the time, which was at the beginning of development, I didn't realize that a generator doesn't put out enough amperage to power the fuel injection. So I took it to a show in Daytona. It was the first show I went to, and it was a ride-in show. I fired that beast up. I never started this bike before, because I was still building it on the way down to Daytona. I fired it up, and it fired up, but boy, it was running up, bro. It was backfiring and popping, and And anyhow, I took I think it was second or third place, I forget.
Now that was a Rat's Hole show, wasn't it?
No, no, I was a ride-in Harley ride-in show is what it was. Harley Davidson used to have ride-in shows, and in fact, Willie G was there, and at the time they had the Miss Harley Davidson gal. She was there. I think her name was Christine or something at the time. But the long story short is I realized that I had to rebuild the whole bike because a generator wasn't the way to go. So what I did was I pulled that engine and I put in a hybrid motor, which was a generator right and an alternator left. So it kind of looked like the same motor, but it was an alternator. And then that bike ran unbelievable. And the way we configured it, I told them certain specifics that I wanted to have in the fuel injection, and one of them was nitrous. I thought that would be a really great thing for guys that want a little more performance but cheap, because nitrous is a lot of performance cheap if it's done right.
Yeah.
And with fuel injection, you can really do it right. We were able to retard the timing, putting more fuel through the injectors. When the nitrous came in, had a you could
retard, yeah,
and everything. And when that fuel injection came in, it was so smooth you didn't even know it, but it boosted it. Like I think it was a 50 horsepower shot, which is a decent amount of horsepower. When you spend a couple $100 on 2 bottles, that's a pretty good result for what you spent.
Right.
And anyhow, that was a Thunder Twin fuel injection, and we actually had Harley Davidson came to us and asked us to quote, because at the time they didn't have fuel injection yet. They hadn't introduced their first fuel injection bike, which happened in '95. We started this project in '89, and I built the bike I think in '91 or '92, and then we started selling it commercially in '92, '93. And we came out with 1,000 kits, and it was based around one specific calibration, where we were going to do other calibrations after that.
Yeah.
But it was the first production, commercially available fuel injection system ever for Harley.
Well, I mean, obviously you've been a hot rod guy from the beginning. So how did you make that transition into driveline and clutches and stuff?
Well, when I was with Excel, and they were basically ignition products, a lot of ignition products, and there was other stuff that I bought in the line. There was brake lines, stuff like that. But I left there and I went to Crane, and Crane was cams, obviously. They tried a couple other things that didn't work out too good. And then from Crane, I went to Comp Cams, which was more cam products than ignition.
Hey, you better hope Alvarez isn't watching this. You'll hurt his feelings.
Well, Alvarez and I go back a long way, and he's hated me since the moment he met me.
We all do.
But I will be at his birthday party. In fact, he's getting inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Sturge, well deserved, by the way.
Yes, it is.
We'll be there for that. Hopefully, he's a great guy.
Hey, I'll be sitting at his table.
Well, I assume I'll be sitting at his table as well, but
in the back though.
You took my spot, you son of a.
I'll bring you a booster seat though.
Yeah. For those who don't understand the joke, I'm sitting on a book right now because I. Anyhow, I went from Crane to Comp Cams, and then from Comp Cams, I went into a little company called Bikers Depot. That was a kind of an idea that came about with a couple of guys that approached me to do a kind of a motorcycle dealer thing that was on par with like a Pkwy's or those AutoZone, those big chain auto parts stores, and my automotive experience, which started incidentally, my dad was a parts jobber back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. He had an auto parts store, and I worked there, so I had a lot of auto parts experience with, and also I was kind of a gearhead. I was always in the hot rod cars and whatnot. So it's kind of a parallel development, and it all kind of fused together. But when I left Bikers Depot, which is a whole other story, which I won't get into, I was approached by a guy named John Ventriglia, who was one of the owners of a company called Rivera Engineering out on the West Coast, and he asked me to come on board there to help him out because they needed somebody that was good with product and business ideas, et cetera, et cetera. So I ended up going to work for them. I moved out to the West Coast, which that's a whole other story.
We don't have that much time, bud.
Yeah, right. So and that began my involvement with belt drives and clutches, and from there of course one thing led to another, and I started this little company, and we're doing clutches and belts and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I'm familiar with your Shovelhead clutch too, and as well all the way up through the twin cam stuff, and your Shovelhead clutch is an incredible improvement over stock, and it's really a great product. So if you could tell us kind of some of the issues with the stock Harley Shovelhead stuff, and then how yours is different and better.
It's funny you should ask me that, because I just happen to have a couple of parts. So to be clear, our Shovelhead clutch is my favorite, and it's our best selling. And one of the reasons is because what it replaces, most shovel guys, panhead guys, knucklehead guys, even flathead guys will recognize this little puppy here. This is the clutch hub from the OE Harley's early clutch, which started out like in 36, and went all the way up till they were still using an 85 on the earliest soft tails. 84 and 85 also uses clutch on the soft tails. But basically what you got here, so you have the hub's got a bunch of studs you can see, and it's got a retainer. Can you see this? Is that
yeah, it's perfect. Yeah,
retainer with some needle bearings in it, and it's kind of loose and it kind of wobbles around. Most people will be familiar with that. And it's got a friction liner on the back right here that contacts the back of the clutch basket, this area right here. And the bearings on the clutch hub run in this area right here. So a couple of problems with this thing, okay, it's still used. A lot of people still use it because, well, personally, I think it's because they don't know any better. But they still use it for a variety of different reasons. But a couple of problems of it is the friction plate for this thing is got a steel core. That means the frictions are bonded onto a steel plate, right? And this thing slides down over these studs, and it moves not even an eighth of an inch on these studs when you engage and disengage the clutch. And what it does is it ends up wearing little grooves in the studs. A lot of people don't realize this, and I tell people, take a look. If you're having a problem with the thing not disengaging properly, take a look at the studs. If the studs are grooved, they need to be replaced. Either replace the studs or the whole hub. The other thing is because this thing wobbles around and this basket is just sitting on there, it wobbles a lot. It tends to contact this friction liner in the back. And that's one of the primary reasons that a lot of guys experience creep. And what creep is you get to the stoplight, you're holding your clutch, you're squeezing the lever as hard as you can, and it's still trying to drag you through the stoplight. So what I used to do, years and years back, is I, come in the habit of putting the bike into neutral as I was coming to
the rolling neutral.
Right, yeah. Exactly. And then, and then put it into gear when you're ready to go off. Okay. And they made a lot of fixes for this thing. They had longer bearings, and they had the big fix, the eliminator plate, I think it was called. I kind of forget now. But they're all Band-Aids, and really the main problem with this hub is not fixed by those Band-Aids. So we took a look at the clutch, and we made a determination on what the biggest problems are. The biggest problems are the studs, the springs that put pressure on the pressure plate against the clutch pack, they're coil springs. That's always been a big problem. Very difficult to adjust. 30 seconds and a spark plug and this, that, and the other thing. They're just very difficult to adjust. Right. Some people get it that they're close, but I've seen people come and say, "Oh, mine works fine. I've got no problem." I say, "Oh, let me check it out," and it is by far not fine. I mean, they're just so used to it they think it's fine. So what we did was we re-engineered the whole thing, and what we did was we replaced all these bearings first off. That was the primary problem with this little puppy here. And what this is an aluminum bearing retainer with a double rolled sealed bearing. It's an automotive type bearing, double roll. It's very stable. And this puppy basically drops down into the center of the basket, and then you flip it over and there's a retaining ring on the back, stack up a bit. So you got this thing. We press the clutch hub into this bearing, right?
Right.
It's perfectly stable. It's not rocking, it's not rolling, it's not wobbling. And then this thing drops into the basket, right?
Yep.
And then you secure it with the retaining ring on the back. The retaining ring bolts right to the back side of this bearing retainer.
Well, and what I like about that system is even if the bearings on the stock setup have chewed up the basket, because of that sleeve, you can still retain the basket, and it doesn't matter if it's.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah. That was one of the things I was going to say.
Hey, I beat you to it, man. Just like most things,
I'd like to say thank you, but I think my thank you wouldn't be acceptable on.
No, never.
So anyhow,
as Kevin said. As Kevin said.
Yeah, as Kevin said, whether your basket in the bearing area is chewed up or not doesn't matter because we don't utilize this. This thing is locked inside the basket, and it's very stable, no wobble in it at all. And the other thing we recognized was that the coil springs that you use on these clutches are difficult at this. When you tighten down a coil spring, you get close to coil bind. The closer you get to that thing being fully collapsed, the harder it is to adjust, and the harder it is to pull in. It gets real hard. That's one of the biggest things is wrist strain. So we replaced all that stuff with state-of-the-art diaphragm spring. The diaphragm spring, thank you.
Now, I have to tell you, and I'm probably going to interrupt you on this, that using your clutches, the diaphragm spring, people absolutely love the way that the clutch feels because it's almost like you have one way I know to describe it is so you're in that friction zone, right? So when it's almost like you feel the detent snap a little bit when the spring comes over center. It's almost like it's easier to pull, and you have this very broad friction zone, and you can float the clutch, especially on big hot rod engines. But then you have that point that right before you feel it snap, so it's easier for slow speed stuff too, especially again with hot rods. So you can use that friction zone to control the bike and all that, but you've got enough tension on the spring, but yet a lighter pull, the further it seems you pull it in. And that's what every customer I have when I put your clutches in, that's what one of the big things they love about it.
Why am I even here? You're doing such a good job.
Well, you're a beautiful man, Ben. And
oh God, yeah. I'm gonna throw up. Okay, I'm gonna launch here in a couple of seconds. You're gonna have groceries all over my screen. You won't be affected, but the people looking at me are gonna see the slime dripping down. Anyhow, yeah, you're right. It's a diaphragm spring, which is used on everything these days. Automotive. Except in some race applications, of course, you have some clutches that are still coil spring actuated. But the diaphragm spring has a mechanical advantage when it reaches over center. There's really no more wrist strain. You've already gone past that strain, and you have full engagement with the clutch. At the point that when you release the clutch, it's very easy and very easy to adjust because rather than having 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 coil springs like some of the competitors out there, you have one spring. So you have tension completely 360 degrees on that clutch pack. So rather than having a coil spring that maybe is a little tighter on one side and a little looser on the other side, so it's the reason why it's hard to adjust, you've got, you know, tension all the way evenly all the way around that clutch, and it makes it a lot easier to adjust. And also what we have done, we created a billet aluminum pressure plate, and this spring fits into a little pocket. You can see the little pocket here. You see that? Spring fits into that pocket so that it's all the tension, all the pressure of the spring is pushed down through, it's captured by that pocket and pushed down through the clutch pack. So you don't lose any of the spring tension where, you know, if you didn't have that pocket, it would kind of dissipate out to the sides, if you're following what I'm saying. I don't think I'm doing a great job of explaining it, but I ain't that smart. So anyhow, it's a billet aluminum pressure plate, and it's got less than a 1/10,000th of an inch of flex. It's very stiff. So all the pressure from the clutch, from the diaphragm spring, from the pressure plate, are going right to the clutch pack. And on the back side of the clutch pack, we have a steel plate, some floating steel plate that absorbs that pressure and it keeps it within the clutch pack. Because what you want is you want the steel drive plate and the friction plate to mesh really tightly so that all that power is going through your input shaft, the main shaft. The other thing we did was we came out with a clutch plate that is, our clutch material is carbon Kevlar, and it's very aggressive so that you get more engagement, more quicker engagement for bigger horsepower motors, for, you know, those guys that are hot rodding, which I don't know of anybody that ain't hot rodding. So I think it's predominantly the market is the guys, you know, that are hot rodding. I mean, I don't know of a whole, I know guys that say, oh yeah, I drive my bike like a grandmother. Yeah, grandmother on steroids. You know, they're just beating the crap out of that thing, you know. So
Granny's 409, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So you know, all these things, the hub and the bearing and the diaphragm spring, the pressure plate, we came out with just a great clutch that really transmits the power. It's very easy on your wrist. The wrist strain is very minimal. In fact, this diaphragm spring, the silver, we actually have three different diaphragm springs. You got a black one, which is stock-like. I don't use that very often unless somebody has, you know, an infirmity, but not a lot of power because it won't hold a ton of power. Then the silver spring is what we use most often. We call that our competition spring. That holds a ton of power, and it's like a two-finger pull. I've got it on all my shovels. I got 3 shovel heads and I got a pan head, and they're on all those bikes, and I can pull it in with 2 fingers. That's if the cable is routed correct. A lot of people say, "Oh man, this is really hard to pull in," and I always tell them, "Well, check the cable routing and the internal cable on the you know, on that jacket, because it's possible the cable's frayed or the routing. I mean, just moving the thing a couple of you know, like a half an inch can change how that clutch will feel."
Absolutely.
Just throwing it a little aside there, but it's very easy to pull in, and they're just great for shovel heads. It's the best clutch we have, undoubtedly, no doubt.
Cool. Now, how does that transition into later model bikes? Similar technology throughout the whole product line, right?
All of our clutches, like this is a twin cam clutch, uses diaphragm spring technology. So basically, all this stuff is, except for the outer geometry of the plates, you know, because we make these clutches to fit into stock baskets. So, like for instance, this is well, this is a belt drive, but this is basically the stock configuration of a shovel head, a pan head, knuckle head basket. So these clutch plates are meant to slide in on these steel dogs. They call them dogs. These things right here. Okay, so same thing with the twin cam, Sportster clutch, you know, our Evo clutches. The configuration of the fibers are meant to fit in the stock basket. So you can take your stock basket, buy our Comp Master clutch. That's what it's called, Comp Master, and it will drop right into the stock basket, press into the bearing, and you have a great clutch that's easy to pull in, less wrist strain, holds a lot more power. All of our clutch plates have a lot more surface area. They're wider, so there's more volumetric surface area, so there's better engagement.
Right. Okay. Now, and just so everybody knows, I mean, if you want to hit our website, you can look and see all the different clutches that Ben's got there. But at the end of the video, I'm going to put a link over here on this side. I did an installation video, so you'll have a visual of what Ben's talking about on the install here. So I did an installation video many months back that goes step by step on how to install one of the clutches, and it's really not that difficult. It's pretty easy to do. Now, when they install your clutch, what fluid do you recommend in the primary?
Well, it's a question I get answered asked all the time. We recommend, for in most cases, ATF, automatic transmission fluid, F-type, Ford Lincoln FLM, Ford Lincoln Mercury. It's a little bit more aggressive. Now that changes when you get to the let's say 07 and later models. It's actually 06 Dynas, 07 later big twins, because
Compensator, right?
Harley's compensator has an enormous problem. wasn't really designed correctly. They had a lot of problems with them burning up, so they put a lot of fluid in there, and they recommend a synthetic fluid. The last thing you want on your clutch fibers is something that's very viscous, because a clutch is all about friction, right? So if you put a really, lubricous, a really
slippery. Swippery, man. It's swippery.
Yeah, slippery, like KY, Joe. If you put something really slippery on your fiber, well, you're going to minimize the amount of friction.
Yes.
And the fibers against the steels, that's what engages your clutch. So you don't want something that's got a lot of lubricity, is the word I was trying to come up with. Thanks for the help.
Well, and on that note, I'm going to get a little techie on this. All right, and I'm sure you saw this when the cruise drive transmissions came out. I mean, on a clutch, to fully disengage a clutch and separate all the plates, you really need about 60 to 80 thousandths of pressure plate travel to get, everything fully separated so the clutch is completely, open, right?
That's free
yeah.
play,
So
yes.
when the cruise drives came out, even if you completely, you're stretching the cable all the way, even if you take the push rod and completely bottom it out and pull a lever in, you may be lucky to get 80 with the entire system as tight as it can possibly be. So clutch adjustment is critical, and the viscosity of what and the lubricity, the slipperiness, of what you're running in that primary really matters. And so what I found when we started working together when the cruise drive came out, right? Because the pressure plate doesn't flex. The other thing I like is how the adjuster screw, you eliminate the plate and the clip out of your typical pressure plate, and it's just put into yours. It removes a tremendous amount of free play there and rattle. And because the pressure plate's so stiff, you're able to adjust the clutch right, get the right amount of free play in it, but still get the proper travel of the pressure plate to get full disengagement. So
that's absolutely true. And just for people that are not aware, Cruise Drive is Harley's brand name for their 6-speed transmission, which came out in the 06 Dynas and 07 and later models.
It's crude drive, Ben. It's called crude drive.
Yeah, I don't put down other people's products even if they're junk. Anyhow, you're right that it is critical, that adjustment, and I think that was one of the big reasons that Harley started using more and more, and I think it's 100% now, their hydraulic clutch, because the hydraulic clutch, first off, it takes that whole almost the whole adjustment thing out of the picture. And, it's self-adjusting according to Harley. And in a lot of cases it is. But that makes it easier for guys to jump on the bike that don't have a lot of mechanical experience to drive the bike, because the clutch adjustment is critical on those bikes. But with our clutch, it makes it a lot easier, even if it's mechanical, because first off, I have on my website a bulletproof for people who ever go on my website, which is American Prime mfginc.com. Under the tech heading, I've got a clutch adjustment that's bulletproof. If you follow that 100%, there is no way that you won't have a perfect adjustment. I recommend people read that if they're having trouble adjusting their own clutch, or better yet, bring it into Kevin Baxter's shop and have him adjust it. Then you'll walk out with more horsepower and a clutch adjustment and no slipperiness. It's all good. So we have we do clutches all the way up to the 2017 models, not including the M8s. We're working on M8 products, but I have a little thing called lack of money that is prohibiting me from coming out with that right off the bat. But it'll come out eventually. But we do clutches for all the big twin models, as well as a Sportster clutch. It's really a killer little clutch. And this thing again utilizes the stock Harley adjustment stuff. Pops right in the center with the C-clip. It comes together pretty much assembled. Pops right into the basket. Great clutch for Sportsters. I know there's a lot of guys out there that are into the Sportster line, because Harley came out a lot of cool, like the 48 and the 72 and the 22 and the 33.5 and the 19.5. And then there's the XL 1200, was it? XL 1200?
Mm-hmm.
They come.
So, yep.
Yeah, a lot of neat Sportsters. So that's a good clutch for those bikes.
Cool. All right, I've got a couple things. Well, when you mentioned your excitement and slipperiness, Dave said it was kind of like your first date and you got to second base. So, thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dave.
So Rick's got a question. He says, I lost the drive connection from my motor to my transmission. Mechanic said it's the clutch hub. Does this sound familiar? If so, which hub is likely to be the cause, and what damage should I look for? If I understand what he's getting at here, basically, either transmission or primary isn't putting power to the rear wheel. So you've got a lot of components in there. You've got potential compensator issues, primary chain, clutch basket, clutch disc. You could have a secondary drive issue. You could have, even a transmission issue. So it's hard for us to answer
the first thing, if I can interject, is what is the bike?
It is a 2004 Road King Custom.
Okay, so that is an awful hard question to answer. If the mechanic that diagnosed that it might be something in the clutch, he may have some information regarding that I'm not privy to. But there's a spline inside the steel hub right here, and if that isn't correctly machined and correctly hardened, et cetera, if it's not the correct material, there's a possibility, if you have a lot of movement in there, if it's not machined right, that you could take that spline out altogether. And if you did, then that main shaft would just be turning inside of here and it wouldn't be engaging at all. So, I mean, again, it's very hard to answer because I don't know what's going on in there. I'd have to ask a ton more questions to get specifics. But you might want to look at that to see if that's the case. The other thing is, like Kevin said, the compensator has always been a problem. So it was less of a problem before Harley came out with their new compensator in 06, 07 later. But the earlier compensators, if they weren't torqued down correctly, would have a tendency to back off. The nut would back off. And then you're not getting engagement on the compensator. So the engine's turning around. It's moving the compensator, but not moving the chain to the clutch. So if you're getting a lot of clunking and noises out of there, then I would pull the primer, drain the oil, pull the outer primary, and check that compensator. That's always been a huge problem where, if somebody calls me and says, yeah, I'm getting a lot of noise and I'm not getting engagement, blah, 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 I say, pull the outer primary and check that compensator. Odds are it backed off and it's not engaging anymore.
Right. Well, then you also have, if you remember back around, I think it was around 2011, again, we're talking about the Cruise Drive Factory 6-speed with the neutral rattle thing. Harley put out the bulletin that it sounds like shaking a paint can inside the primary or in the transmission area, and it's their gear lash is so loose that they have to essentially put springs in there to try to maintain lash on the gears. And there were a lot of bikes on those stock transmissions that it's exactly what it sounded like, shaking a can of marbles inside the primary. So it's hard to know exactly where those noises can be coming from sometimes when you have so many components trying to work together.
Yeah, and the noise tend to generate, so if you got a noise, that you think is coming from the engine, could be from the primary, could even be from the rear wheel, a bad bearing or something. It's really a matter of getting the bike and starting to do your, proper amount of mechanical testing so that you can see exactly where it's coming at. There's a lot of guys out there, mechanics, especially, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's a fair amount of guys that do the replacement thing. Well, it's got to be this, so they replace it. Well, it turns out not to be that, so they replace the next thing. And of course, eventually they may find out what the problem is, but in the meantime, the customer is paying all this money to have all this stuff replaced that maybe necessarily didn't need to be replaced. So I think it's really important to do your due diligence, so to speak, and make a good determination of what is the cause before you start replacing stuff, so that when you replace it, that you fixed it. That's the primary cause.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm going to open this up too. If any of you guys have any questions that are live with us now, feel free to type in the questions, and we can cover that with Ben here. So, all right, if that's everything clutch, you've got a pretty good line of drive belts there too, right?
Yeah, we decided to get in the belts because eventually I want to get the belt drives. Right now we don't make a belt drive, except sometimes we'll do a one-off thing for guys, if I have the time. But we have a very close relationship with Gates. I've had that relationship for many years, and so
about 115 years, give or take, right?
116 actually, 0.5.
So a little trivia fact for everyone: Ben was actually on site and was part of the moving crew when Columbus unloaded the Mayflower.
Yeah, that a little more trivia. Sorry,
I love you, man.
So anyhow, we have a very close relationship with Gates, which are the preeminent belt manufacturers. They are OE to Harley, they were OE to Victory, they're OE to Indian, KTM. A lot of big brand name motorcycles use Gates belts because they're just the best belts in the world. They've refined the technology of carbon fiber in belts to such a degree that they've gotten the belts thinner and thinner and thinner, and the belts just withstand a lot of abuse and a lot of power. So we've got rear drive belts. You can see this is one of them. Out of the, I don't know, we probably got 30 or 40 different sizes in widths as well as tooth count. So they're all 14 millimeter. That's the size of the tooth. You measure that from going the center of one tooth to the center of the next tooth. That's 14 millimeter. And this particular belt is a 24 millimeter that all the late model bikes use. But we have 1.5 inch, 1.125, 30 millimeter, 24 millimeter. We got a lot of different belts to fit, stock applications as well as custom applications. And all these belts have a polyurethane jacket, what the Gates calls poly chain. It's a poly chain jacket, and it has a carbon fiber core. the stranding is carbon fiber. Very strong belt. And on top of that, we do primary belts, of course. And the primary belts, we cover the whole gamut. So from the early shovelhead stuff, you know, the 132 teeth, 99 teeth, et cetera, 11 millimeter, 8 millimeter, 11 millimeter belts. We do belts that are hard to get now. Like we have this particular belt is our 6024-0107. And this was used in all of Primo's Brute 3 belt drives. It's 138 tooth, inch and 3/4 wide, 8 millimeter tooth, Kevlar corded, and outer rubber jacket. And nobody's belt works as good as these belts. So if a belt's going to hold up, it's got to be a Gates belt. Yeah. Although that isn't the final say in how long a belt lasts. But there's other guys that have belts similar, but they're like inch and 5/8. This is a true inch and 3/4 wide belt. And the wider the belt is, absolutely, the more power it's going to hold. So having this a full inch and 3/4 wide is very handy. We also do Primo came out with a Brute 2 Extreme and a Brute 3 Extreme. Brute 3 Extreme replaced the Brute 3 because the rubber Kevlar jacket belt was not as strong as these belts. These belts are polyurethane again. It's a smooth back polyurethane. It's 11 millimeter tooth. Different tooth and different tooth count from the early Shovelhead belt. But this will fit the Brute 3 Extreme by Primo. And this particular one's 101 tooth, 6.5 wide, polyurethane, and it's got a dense pack Kevlar cord. It's very, very strong belt. I've seen 0 of these break. I'm sure somebody has, but I have seen 0 of them break. We also have the Brute 3 Extreme belt, which is the same tooth count, inch and 3/4 wide, the same belt construction.
Now, a common question, again, we're talking hot rod stuff here, on final drive belts. And my answer, I always tell people it's subjective, and depending on how hard they're going to actually ride the bike, what kind of power can a belt take versus doing a chain conversion? I mean, do you...
That's a question I get asked all the time.
I know it, me too, yeah.
It's very hard to pin down. First off, it's not just the power, okay? Because you can have 1,000,000 horsepower, right? But if you drive like grandma, then it's going to last, you know. But if you're beating the snot out of a 50 horsepower bike, well, you're going to have more problems than the guy with a 100 horsepower bike that's not beating it, right? So it's a combination of torque, which is the power, and you know, how you ride the bike and where you're riding the bike, what kind of road service, so on and so forth. Like
and proper adjustment too, right? I mean, stock bikes will break belts if they're adjusted too loose.
That's a very big. It's how it's adjusted, how it's ventilated. Belts need ventilation; they need airflow. Otherwise, it compromises the material. So if you take a belt drive and a primary belt drive, and you stick it inside an enclosed primary, of course, there's no oil in there. That include, when we tested it, that can reach over 300 degrees inside that primary. And what it does is it softens up the material of the belt, and you end up having a belt failure. The same thing with alignment. It's very important that the belt be aligned correctly. Chains are more forgiving. Okay, chains are more forgiving to misalignment, but even chains, if you look at any OE Harley manual, it tells you that you need to have that chain aligned, and it tells you to put shims in, et cetera, et cetera. You can look it up, any OE Harley service manual. But important for an alignment, for good, correct alignment. It's important for correct installation, important for temperature control via ventilation, and it's important that you match the belt with the power output and the way you drive the bike. Okay, so a lot of people say, well, why go to a belt? Why not just go to a chain? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Belt drives came about principally because, and this is kind of funny, but the first belt drive came about because a lot of guys were putting their inner primaries on incorrectly on the first, going back a ways. There was oil inside that inner primary, and there was a lip on the motor case. On the motor case, and they put an O-ring on there, and then the primary on there, and that would seal that motor case from leaking from the inner primary that had oil in it, or prior to that, that it had oil being pumped in there. You had to have a real good seal so that the oil wouldn't collect inside there. That's Shovelheads and earlier.
Sure.
So what they do is they put the inner primary on wrong, and they would crack that lip that was on the motor case. Okay, and if you crack the lip on the motor case, you really can't weld it while the motor is together. That's not advisable. Although people do it, you know, and they end up screwing up the, you know, I mean, it can even weld pins and rods together, you know, if you're doing it incorrectly. But typically you get warpage, that kind of thing. Anyhow, so you had to crack the lip. It wouldn't seal anymore. So now what do? Take the whole motor apart, redo it? No. You bought a belt drive, came out with the belt drive, you put it on, all your problems are solved because there's no oil in there. You don't have any oil leaks. Clutches, I don't care what clutch it is, always engages better if it's dry. A dry clutch will always engage better. Why? You got the ultimate amount of friction.
Because it's not slippery.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not slippery. Yeah. I love those technical terms. It ain't slippy. So, but by and large, I love belt drives. Belt drives are great, and I don't make a belt drive right now, so I'm saying I like belt drives because I think that they're a great fix for a lot of problems, and they're easier to work with. They're easier to work on. But they're not perfect for every application. So if you have a bike that's got a ton of horsepower and you want to keep the belt or the chain enclosed, then don't use a belt, because odds are you're probably going to break the belt. Use an open belt drive, which has a wider belt, because like I said before, the wider the belt, the more power it'll hold. We have belt drives that go up to they're out there that are 3.5 inches wide. You know, they use them on top fuel bikes that are pushing 1,000 horsepower, because the belts, can handle that kind of power. But if you don't want an open belt drive, you don't want to go to a wider belt, then you have to kind of make a decision on for your particular application: is a enclosed belt drive better, or is a chain drive better?
Yeah,
and that's just it's simple mathematics. If you have a ton of power, it's going to overwhelm the belt. Then it's just not the application for you.
All right. Well, I've got one more question I want to tackle, and then you've got one more thing you want to show us before we shut this down, I believe. So Hoop Ride's asking, what are my thoughts on Redline primary oil? Everybody is saying it is the best out there. Now, I'll answer this. First thing is, it depends on the clutch that you have in it and the compensator. If you've changed, you need to talk to whoever made your clutch material, find out what they think about what you're running, and then and then the same with the compensator. The biggest thing is, if you're whatever product you're using in the primary, it's obviously can't use an automotive oil. You need to make sure that it's JSO MA certified. The JSO MA certification was specifically designed for wet clutch applications. And yeah, I know a ton of people that have run Redline. In a primary, the oil doesn't stay in there really long enough to, it's kind of hard to say exactly, which one is the best. I've seen them all, and I can't really put my finger on which one's the best one. So what I use is what the clutch manufacturer and the compensator manufacturer recommends. You have any input on that, Ben?
It's there's a lot of great oils out there. Redline's a great manufacturer. It's a great brand name. There's many. I like when we were doing transmissions, I pushed Bel-Ray 85140. I liked it because it was red in color, so if you had a leak in the Trinity, you could tell it apart from a leak in the primary. A lot of different names out there that are great. What's more important is what oil are you putting in there? Is it the oil that's correct for the application? So yeah, Redline's great to use. as long as the oil from Redline is the oil that is correct for the application. And again, like Kevin said, like you said, the manufacturer sometimes specifies a specific oil, like we specify ATF type for our clutches. It works best with our clutches because they're almost basically automatic transmission clutch discs, right? So that's what we recommend. So if you use Redline ATF type, that's great. That's fine. We don't recommend synthetic on the clutch because it's, you know, if you use it on the clutch, it gets too
slippery.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And you only need to put about 18 to 20 ounces in there, right?
Well, that's the other thing. You know, don't a lot of guys tend to overfill their primaries. And what I say to them now this is referring to 06 and earlier, not including 06 Dyna. I tell them to put enough fluid in so it's just over the bottom of the starter ring gear that's bolted to the basket. The starter ring gear is what the jack shaft or the Bendix drive engages with to turn that clutch basket so you can start the bike. So that's actually what's flipping that oil all over the place. And keep in mind, you're in a very consolidated area there. There's not a lot of room in there. So when that ring gear picks up the oil, it's throwing it everywhere. What you're doing is lubricating the steel on steel parts and the shoe, which is nylon. Okay, you want to lubricate those so they don't burn up. You're not lubricating the clutch. The clutch does not need lubricating. Some people will ask me sometimes, well, I'm told you need to soak the clutch plates for 10 minutes or something. Well, that's not what I say. The only time I recommend soaking the clutch plates, and it's just dip them and wipe off the excess. It's not leave them in there for 10 minutes. Now, there's people that disagree, and you may even disagree. My reasons are this. If you have a chattering clutch, which is, it's not engaging smoothly, sometimes dipping it into the fluid and then wiping it off and putting it in will get rid of that chattering. You know why? Because it gets a little slippery and it's not engaging. Thank you. It's not engaging as aggressively, and it'll take that chattering away. But otherwise, you really don't need to lubricate the clutch.
Perfect. All right. So before, guys, if you want to ask questions while we finish up with this last couple of more minutes here, feel free, and then we'll get to them at the end. But you had something else you wanted to show us, Ben, all right?
Yeah, one last thing that's a really good product for us. We sell literally thousands of these things. And to me, it's like a why. But, people are still using points or Dyna-S type ignitions out there, a lot of people. So we have this Advance that was originally incepted by a different company. And they stopped selling it, so we started selling it because it's such a great advance. It's 100% made in the U.S. like our clutches. There's nothing on this thing that's made outside of the country. It's got the base and post are made out of stainless steel, so they don't corrode, which is a big factor in these things failing. The weights are coated with a special poly coating that makes it move quicker. There's less resistance, less friction. It's more smoothie or
slippery.
So they open and close easier, and there's less heat retention. The springs are all made in the U.S. They're CNC coil springs. Everything's the best you can get. They're all assembled in-house by me. And the final product is a beautiful little Advance that you can use on most any points-driven application, except for earlier bikes that have timers. This will not work on a timer. It's not for reverse rotation. There's no way to mount it to a points to a timer assembly. But on anything that's cone driven, that's got a points plate, this thing works great. Great. Little Advanced unit that's 100% made in the U.S. Very reasonable price, only like $72 retail. I recommend everybody, even if they don't have points, at least put one on you know, like on their mantle above the fireplace. It looks great.
And it has an electrostatic coating that reduces its friction coefficient. In other words, it's slippery.
Yeah.
All right. I haven't seen any more questions pop up. Ben, have you got anything to add? Man, I can't thank you enough for jumping in here with us.
I just once again want to reiterate that American Prime is an American company. 99% of our stuff is made in the U.S. I got a couple of bearings that are not, because it's hard to get bearings inside the country, unfortunately. Hopefully, maybe in the ensuing years here, that will change. It's veteran owned. I was in the Marine Corps from 69 to 75. We're very, very big on customer service. I get people asking me questions every day that don't even apply to my product. Just they're looking for answers. They're having trouble finding it. If I got the answer, I'm happy to help out. I ask people to take a look at our website, look at our product lineup on there. If there's anything we can do for you, anything we can sell to you, please let us know.
I've got one more quick question that we're going to answer here. It's a good question before I tell you bye. What's the main culprit of not finding neutral when the bike is idling? Have tried everything, running Barnett, Dark Horse, Hayden, etc. Most of the time, I find that that's a clutch adjustment issue. That or
well, I have to agree that the clutch adjustment is very important, but it also could have something to do with the transmission. Now, there's a couple adjustments on the transmission, earlier transmissions, that's pre-Harley 6-speeds. There's this concentric screw that adjusts the centering. It's a centering adjustment for the shift mechanism. That sometimes has something to do with whether you're getting into gear and consequently out of gear or into neutral.
One quick way to diagnose or eliminate clutch is you can put for blind Lowe's benefit, just put a dial indicator on the pressure plate, pull the clutch in and out, and see what your pressure plate travel is. If you're only getting, 40 or 50 thou, more than likely it's a clutch adjustment. Then you take off the pressure plate, look at the plates, see if the color of the plates, all that type of stuff. So that's a way to diagnose clutch anyway.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it is a clutch adjustment, and that can be so many different, the factors that are preventing you from getting the correct clutch adjustment. So I say, if you use that clutch adjustment that's on my website, it's pretty clear cut and it's very easy to do. And you can, if you're still having, after you do the clutch adjustment, if you're still having problems getting into neutral, then you may be able to say, well, it's not the clutch, it's something else.
Can overfilling the primary make neutral hard to find? Yes, it can. And that goes back to what we were talking before. Ben had mentioned, when you overfill it, use too much fluid, it can actually almost create friction between the plates. It can also take up the space and not fully disengage the plates from the fibers.
Yeah, what it does is it creates a barrier between the steel and the fiber, and that barrier, which is fluid, prevents a good engagement and disengagement. So if you're trying to get into one gear or another, whether it's neutral, first, second, whatever, that could impede that.
All right, Ben, are you done talking now?
Could I talk about my grandma?
Sure. All right, man, we're going to cut this off. Ben, I'll give you a call, buddy. Thanks for everything you do. I really appreciate it very much, man. Thanks for coming in here with us.
Well, thanks for having me on, Kevin. I appreciate it.
All right. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. Ben, again, thank you very, very much for jumping in with us and taking your time and answering all the questions. Now, I'm going to put a link, or links over here. It's this way. Yeah, I'm going to put links up. The first link that you'll see once this processes through YouTube is a link to the instructional video we did on how to install the American Prime clutches. And so I have a link to that. And below that, you're going to see a link to all of our other Harley Tech Tip videos. Also, in the description below, I'm going to put a link to the American Prime Manufacturing website so you can learn more about his products there. A link to our website where you'll see that information, and also a link to Ben's YouTube channel where you can see more of the videos and things that he has done there. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you very much. Thanks to our channel members. We hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful weekend and ride safe. Take care of yourselves.